Okay, one more. So I also would very much encourage you to stay for the meetup. This idea of lightning talks is rather popular in US. It's where you don't have to have a presentation, you just have an idea. We say in US 5 slides, 5 minutes. First slide is hello, last slide is goodbye, you only need 3. Second slide is what I'm going to say, and the second to last slide is what I just said. I only need 1. Very easy. I learn so much every time someone does a lightning talk. So please, this is a great opportunity for me to learn what you're working on and what your ideas are about all these things. Every question I've heard today is a great lightning talk. Okay. So we actually started the day about business value, like why APIs. Then we started to talk about how we can create these APIs with these microservice models. And then we heard some very specific things about what's going on at ANA Systems to make this a reality at infrastructure level. And then I talk about teams and how we can start to organize our company to use these digital features to take advantage of them. And now I want to talk about the next step up, which is innovation, fostering innovation inside your company. We see this happening quite often in the US and in Europe and all around the world where people are talking about innovation. Innovation is actually making changes in something established. So it's not creating something new, it's making changes to make it better. And this is what we do every day. We all are innovators. And it's important to think about what innovation is like, how we can create an environment for innovation, how we can even recognize innovation. So what does innovation look like? What qualities does it have? So it does not look like this. It does not look like a well-oiled machine chugging along. Innovation is not just organized step by step every day. Innovation is more like an ant colony. Ants running all sorts of places. Often when we look at ants, we can't understand what they're doing, but there is a kind of organization to the group of ants. Not to any one ant, but to the entire group. It turns out this idea about innovation looking more like an ant colony than a machine was written up in Harvard Business Review this last year. Your innovation team shouldn't run like a well-oiled machine. Because well-oiled machines don't innovate. The innovator is always the one asking the tough question, trying something new, doing different. So these are the 2 authors. They basically say in their study, managers of effective teams encouraged adaptive behavior. Less effective teams expected people to abide by plans and rules. Plans and rules do not create innovation. I have a customer who has an innovation initiative. And the first thing you do if you want to innovate is you fill out a form, 3 pages, and ask for permission. No innovation here. Who am I asking permission? 3 pages? No. We don't follow plans and rules if we're innovating. So this is very challenging. This can have implications for our company. So what does this mean? What conditions foster innovation in your company? A powerful central mission with loose structure is what we see over and over again in IT organizations that are able to innovate. Powerful mission, loose structure. This is a picture of the connections on the internet. It's not this central server that controls everyone. Everyone connects to everyone else. It's like Brooks' law. It's like all those possible connections. This is a quote from a Netflix team manager. I like this quote from Steve Urban. I have neither the place, the time, nor the desire to micromanage or make decisions for my team. At Netflix, managers are told your job is to enable your team to do whatever their job is. They get to decide how to do it. You provide them the context. As they say context, we know they don't get to decide what to do. Like, oh, today we're not going to make the system run faster. We're just going to play cards. No. What are we doing today to make it run faster? The team can decide how to do that. Another important element that we see over and over again is maximizing learning. Lots of interaction to maximize learning. People sharing ideas. You saw the slide I showed earlier for Spotify where they have lots of interactions between the teams. They have this organized sharing culture at Spotify. At Spotify, actually, they say, if you make a mistake, that's the most important thing to share, not success. Because if you make a mistake, you learn something that the rest of us didn't. So share what you learned so we don't make the same mistake. So that's very, very powerful. There's a book from about 10 years ago called The Fifth Discipline. I don't remember what the first four are, but the fifth one is learning. As a matter of fact, Peter Senge says, the only sustainable competitive advantage is the organization's ability to learn faster than your competition. Learning faster than your competition. This is what Google does. This is what Amazon does. They learn faster than the competition. And this is very powerful because learning faster means that you can get ahead. So the third one that we see over and over again is constant experimentation. Lots of experiments. Success does not look like a straight line. Success looks like this. It's all over the place. Lots of fits and starts. Lots of experiments. At Google, they arranged what was called 20% time. Do we know this, 20%? 20% of your time, you can experiment on anything you wish. We don't care. That's how they get Google Glass. Google Glass came from a 20% experiment. Gmail came from a 20% experiment. There are many things at Google and at Microsoft and Netflix that came from experiments, just letting people experiment. Now, an interesting thing about this experiment, Deborah Bull from King's College has this quote, if everything we do succeeds, then we're failing because it means we're not taking enough risk. Innovative companies make mistakes. They don't make mistakes that cause the company harm. We'll talk about that in a minute. But taking a risk, taking an experiment is how you get ahead. So the fourth item that we see happen time again is freedom to look into the future. So one of the things that's really quite amazing, Google does this well, Elon Musk's company does this well, Virgin Atlantic does this well. They imagine what the future could be like more than 5 years ahead of time, maybe 10 years. Given the ability to think about the future, lets you set yourself up for success, even though the future's not here yet. And one of the really common patterns for this future success is referred to as S-curve. So this is typically the technology curve. It's slow to adopt and then suddenly gets very, very popular and then starts to level off. Well, it turns out even while something is just picking up, usually the next technology of the future is already begun. People who think about the next horizon often start to experiment with the new technology even while the existing one is very, very powerful. And that means by the time this one takes off, they're already in charge. They already have the experience. This can be very challenging to do. Microsoft has done this a couple of times. Microsoft pioneered the sort of simple screen computer, the home computer, the green screen, even while windowing and graphic user interface was starting to take off. And then they jumped from that simple green screen computer to graphical interfaces. And they wrote on that graphical interface, and they started to experiment with internet before it was powerful, and then they were able to jump to be on the internet and so on and so forth. In fact, there is this series of curves that occurs. It's called the S-curve, or the S pattern. And Microsoft has been one of the companies that's consistently been able to jump the curve over and over, just when we thought that the company would be no longer. All of a sudden, they jump the curve and they reinvent themselves. As a matter of fact, there's a whole book on jumping the S-curve. And one of the things that Paul Nunes says is they use all kinds of means and methods and using them all at once in a somewhat chaotic way. So what happens is there's this sort of ant colony behavior inside organizations that do a good job at jumping the curve. So here's the thing. All these ideas have a couple of major problems. So here's the first one. Sometimes innovation looks like this, right? Failure. You have this great idea, but it doesn't work. If you, as a person, have a difficulty in being seen making mistakes, it will be hard for you to innovate because you have to make mistakes. If your company is not comfortable with you making mistakes, your company will have a difficulty innovating. So you have to sort of fight this worry that this might not work. Of course it won't work. Right? Thomas Edison used year after year to invent the light bulb. He used to say, I have not failed 10,000 times. I've just found 10,000 ways to not invent the light bulb, and I will find the next one. It's always going back and always doing it over and always doing it again. I mentioned Elon Musk earlier. Elon Musk is a great example of this. He says, failure is an option here. Things are not failing, you're not innovating. Elon Musk wants to create these rockets that can land themselves automatically, right? Take off and then land. So every time he would experiment with a rocket landing, he put it on the internet, on YouTube. And time after time after time, it would land and explode. It would blow up. And people would ask him, why do you keep doing this and making it so public that you're failing? He says, failing is an option. Failing is just fine. And recently, I think he actually did successfully land one of his rockets. Did he finally do it? After like 4 or 5 times or something? And he did it because he was willing to fail. So there's another thing, and sometimes innovation looks like chaos. We mentioned this earlier. If it's important for you and your organization to keep everything in order and predictable, it will be hard to innovate. Mary Shelley, who wrote the book Frankenstein and several other books, has this wonderful quote: "Invention does not consist of creating out of a void, but out of chaos. It's when things mix all together that you find the actual answer, that you find the right things that go together." So having a sort of tolerance for chaos and a tolerance for unpredictability is important in an innovative organization. If you want everything explained and everything decided, you're probably not going to be able to innovate. And that takes me to the big one. No big bets. It's a terrible mistake to bet the entire company on one idea. It's not going to work. You're going to ruin the company. Simple as that. You might as well just give all the money away. You need lots of little bets, right? Lots of little ones, not big ones. You need to establish a safe zone, a laboratory, a place where people can experiment. At Netflix, the way they do this, at Amazon, the way they do this is they give everyone, I mentioned this earlier, a credit card for the number of servers, however they want to do. You can experiment, but you can't spend more than this, right? And they set up a whole system where you can create a project and do whatever you want with it, as long as you do it within these boundaries. You use their equipment and you spend this much money and no more. And if it begins to be a good idea, you can get permission from your partner or your supervisor to get more money. But you don't have to ask permission to start, and you don't do it in a place where anyone's going to get hurt. And that leads to the other really important element, and that is enabling unplanned innovation. You can't decide, oh, okay, it's 8 o'clock, I have to innovate for an hour now. No, it's not how it works. You get the idea and you do something. I love this quote: "If you want to achieve greatness, stop asking for permission." So you have to step out and you have to take some risk. And you have to be in an environment where you encourage others to do that as well. And that becomes really, really important. So probably the biggest thing that I would say, along with recognizing innovation, is remembering this no big bets rule. I see many companies that I work with making big bets. We're going to convert all of our IT by next year. Wow, that's it. And there's going to be one day we're just going to flip the switch, and it'll all work great. No. We're going to convert everything overnight, whatever that is. It never works. But little by little, it does very often. That's how it works. Okay. So just to summarize a little bit. Central mission, loose structure. We see this over and over again in IT companies that are good at this innovation. Maximizing learning, a sharing culture where we mostly share our learning. Often, we share our mistakes. Constant experimentation, setting up an environment where everyone gets to experiment. Google's 20%, Amazon's $500 card. There are lots of other companies that do similar things. And the ability to look on the next horizon. Amazon is good at this. Virgin Atlantic is good at this. Google is good at this, thinking about what it would be like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. This is a quote that is shared with all new Netflix employees, and I really love this quote. If you want to build a ship, a sailing ship, don't drum up people together to collect wood and assign them tasks to do, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. I think this is really beautiful. This is a really good idea. The fact that Netflix teaches this to every new employee is very impressive. Because this is what they want them to do, to long for greatness, to be innovative every day. And I think that's really quite amazing. And that's what I have. Thank you very much. Thanks. Questions? Yeah.